No, see, what's better than Gatorade is called Pocari Sweat, and Lemon knows it. Fellow freedom fighters, it has been a tough couple of weeks here on Super Earth right now, as unfortunately we have lost over 90% of our soldiers right now, and I don't know what we're gonna do. But fear not, because it's actually not as bad as we all think it's going to be. So for those of you who haven't been paying attention or haven't played Helldivers 2 in a while, we've been seeing some articles like this right here. After initial success, Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its players with no signs of recovery. Oh my gosh, the game is dead. Put it on the chopping block, get at the guillotine. It is going down right now, literally. But honestly, I think people are overreacting when it comes to this right now, because when it comes to a game like Helldivers, and when you look at the development team that's behind it right now, what they come from, what they've even said themselves, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it doesn't surprise me that Helldivers players have actually gone down, which in fairness to itself also is that it's actually still doing pretty decently well. It's doing better than, you know, a good chunk of the live service games out there. Is it beating Call of Duty or anything like that? No, it absolutely is not. But it never was to begin with. So we'll get into some charts and everything later. But for those of you who don't know, when it comes to something like Helldivers, it had a huge spike due to its popularity, its trending, and everything. As we clearly see here, by the time the game was at its kind of biggest peak, it hit 458,000 all-time peak players, which is amazing for a game that a lot of people thought was just going to flop, not do very well, and just continue on essentially. Well, that's not the case. It's actually done pretty well. And even to right now, and you look at this going like, yikes, it's at 34,000 right now, or 23,000 at the time of this recording right here in this moment, with a 24-hour peak of 47,000. That's still a lot of players. Like, that still is. It still does pretty well. And this is from a team that came from Helldivers 1, which was a very niche game for a lot of people, and a lot of people, not nearly as many people played that game and everything like that. And the content to roll out for this live service has been slower, which, by the way, the developers themselves have said, do not expect us to be able to pump out content at this like weekly pace or anything. Is going to be slower because we want to bring new planets, new guns and everything, all of that stuff. That is what we want to do, and that takes time. Because one thing that they said they were not going to do with the initial success of this game was hire a bunch of new people to then just let them go, because of all the layouts that have been happening within the tech industry over the last couple of years, which, by the way, I applaud them right there, okay? So that is definitely a good thing. Now, obviously, when you see 90% players lost and everything, it does make sense. People eventually move on to other games. They go back to the other games that they were playing beforehand, whatever the case is. It's summer vacation right now in a lot of countries in the world, so people are out on vacations with their family or not playing games as much. And also, when you simply look at players right now, or peak 24-hour player counts and all that kind of stuff, there are some things to take in consideration. For one thing, if I'm someone who simply jumps into the game once or twice a week compared to someone who plays it every day weekly, how do those numbers right there, how do those averages work out? Those aren't exactly measured in the same realm and everything. So that's just something to keep in mind right there. But overall, I don't think Helldivers is really going to all of a sudden die and everything like that. We know for a fact that the developers are working on new content. They released a new planet a few weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago, give or take. There's a brand new planet and everything like that. And we know that there are other factions that they're going to be bringing into this big fight for Super Earth and everything, because we saw that in the first one, but they've obviously got to get that from a top-down game now into a more 3D game, which is going to take time and resources. And like I said many times before already, they have to take it's going to be much slower to get this stuff, released and everything. So that makes sense. So I think if people are, all of a sudden thinking this game is dead, don't. Go play another game, come back, and then eventually, guess what? They're going to release something new. People are going to flock back to it, play it, and it's going to go down and up again. That's essentially how a lot of these live service game works. I know people are going to point to things like Apex and Call of Duty and everything. They're not even trying to be that. They got a team of like 100. And that doesn't necessarily mean that exactly 100 people are working on this game. Some of them are in marketing, some of them are in communications and everything. So realistically, the amount of people actually working on the game are lower. Is 100 a good sized team? Absolutely yes. It's bigger than a lot of other teams. But I would put Helldivers more in between the AA space, and not into the huge, crazy AAA or I guess technically quadruple A space. I would not even put them in there. I put them more in the double A space. So I think people just need to take a breath, calm down, and realize that Helldivers, while yeah, they've got some low numbers right now, although I will still say 47,000 is nothing to scoff at, I think they'll be fine going forward because people will just simply come back, check out the new content, leave, and the same thing over and over again. And no, I don't think it has to do with the PlayStation stuff, but we'll get into that in a second. Lemon, what are your personal thoughts when it comes to this? Because I know, it's been a while since you and I even tried out Helldivers and everything. I played every now and then, but just what are your overall personal thoughts? I mean, we've talked about online live service games before, how it's just like it's all a matter of time and how much time people have and everything. So what are your thoughts on all this?
So full disclosure, I have, I think, 3 hours in the game. I really bounced off it hard. It's just not my shtick. So you could probably say I'm a Debbie Downer over here, but I don't think anyone, first of all, I think the articles are there just because the media wants to do media stuff. I mean, it's their job, so I can't really fault them for it. I think the overall view, in my mind at least, of this should be, this is course correction. The game popped off really hard, far harder than anyone, I think, expected, including the developers, which, it's a great surprise to have. But I think the real kind of test is if it bounces back, if it spikes during a big quote unquote expansion set, whatever, big content dump they may have. Right. If it, it spikes and that spike kind of stays there for a little bit as opposed to just an instant, 2 days and it falls off again, I think it's going to be a better test. Whenever they get to that content and it comes out, I think that is going to be the better test for how alive this live service game is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see that. And again, like you said, it's almost like course correction, right? I mean, you even look at something like Pal World, for example, right? That had huge numbers and huge success right in the initial part. And then it obviously drops off because the people who actually really love that game stick around and continue to play it. But a majority of people most likely tried it out, thought it might have been a little bit fun, and then simply moved on to the next game, right? Which is normal for the most part in this, industry and everything. So the same thing most likely happened with Helldivers too. Or another part of it easily could be that, people unlocked everything and there's not much to really do in the game right now because, it is a very particular type of game where you go in, you kill bugs, you kill Terminators, and you unlock some stuff. But if you've unlocked everything, then maybe doing the stuff over and over again, unless you're with friends, could get boring pretty fast. So you move on to a new game. That makes perfect sense right there. But if new content comes out, let's say a brand new planet comes out, brand new machines, brand new vehicles that you can, unlock and use and everything like that, brand new weapons, all of those stuff, the other unlocks that are in the game, then yeah, I think a lot of people will easily come back and try that out and everything. And if those players, let's say, for example, the player numbers jump back up to, 200,000, right? And then it jumps, and then it obviously goes back down over time and everything, but then jumps right back up to 200,000 when the next thing comes out, whether you call it an expansion or, season or whatever you want to call it. Then I think that right there shows that a lot of people enjoy the game. They just simply will get bored eventually of it. They'll go try something else out, and then they come back and play it again. And if those kind of numbers keep coming back, then I easily consider Helldivers to, still a success. I mean, it obviously has been a success already. There's absolutely no question about it. 12 million copies is nothing to scoff at. People would dream to sell 12 million copies. So I think people just need to kind of calm down and chill out. And like you said, the media are going to do the media things because that's just the way they are, unfortunately. You can't say, like, after initial success, Helldivers 2 has lost some players, but don't worry, it'll be coming back soon. No. How do you get people to click on your articles? You got to do stuff like this, right? It's kind of common.
Yeah, doom scrolling.
Right.
Yeah, no. And I think the problem with the media is, and I apologize for interrupting, but I think because I don't want you to go off the next topic yet, because I think this is an interesting point I just thought of. You mentioned Apex, I think you mentioned Fortnite, but I definitely remember Apex, and I think the critical thing that people are, and this is just live service games in general, there are kind of two different, piles you can put them in. PvE games, so like Helldivers, your Destinies, or PvP games, your Fortnites, your Apex. Your PvP games, you can keep playing them over and over and over and over and over again. That's the point. So you have these player counts that are flatter for longer. PvE games, they are very much a sine wave. Yep. When the new content comes out, shoots up, and then it falls off. Right. I'm sure Destiny is going to look the same exact way in about, a month or so. To start flatlining off.
As a guy who has put, I can't believe I'm saying this, 2,000 hours into Destiny 2 right here. It absolutely does happen. When the big expansions come out that are mostly focused on PvE stuff, the numbers shoot up. I believe Destiny Final Shape got 300,000 plus players to come in and play the game. And now that things are winding down, and I would easily see it in the next couple of months, or even if we look back last year or 2 years beforehand and everything, usually around late summer, early fall time, yeah, players' numbers are definitely lower, mostly because either people are trying to play PvP, which they're just trying to bang their head into a cement wall right there because, you know, especially with the lack of maps and everything, but we'll talk about that beforehand and everything like that. And the only other time numbers might spike up a little bit is when a brand new season comes, and that new season happens to have some cool story stuff, but it's not jumping up to 300,000 plus players. It's jumping up to maybe 100,000 players, and at least at Steam. Obviously, consoles are always going to throw, you know, have their own numbers, but we obviously can't see that kind of stuff, unfortunately, which would be really nice and everything like that. You know, we'll have to wait and see what's going on here. And one comment that we're seeing right here in the chat right here is, at least based on Flock here, is saying that the biggest problem with Helldivers has been that the content they've added doesn't add anything that changes how the game works and plays. New guns and planets are great, but at the end of the day, you're still fighting bugs and bots in the same mission styles. I mean, I could easily make that same comment, though, for Destiny 2, right? You still shoot things, you use abilities. Now, there are new abilities, obviously, and everything like that, but the overall main gameplay loop is going to be the same in any kind of live service game. If you're someone who's expecting the game to go from being a shooter to an MMO to a RPG or something like that, I don't think you know how games are working. Flock, I'm not pointing at you, by the way. I know you obviously know what you're talking about. I'm just saying, for some people who expect these huge major changes every single time something new comes, it's like, that's not how it works. That's not how game development works. That's not how most games, in fact, I'd say 99% of games really work. You all of a sudden really change it up and everything like that. Call of Duty, you're still shooting things. You're still playing the BR if you're into that stuff. Battlefield was the same way. And yes, I said was, because 2042 is garbage. Helldivers 2 is still going to be launching onto a planet, getting your stems, collecting things, fighting off bugs, and fighting off the Terminators. Do they add new factions? Absolutely 100%. They had it in Helldivers 1, and that's the way it's going to have right there. So something like Destiny 2, while yes, they do have varied mechanics and playstyles in the between modes, that's because it is both PvP and PvE, and Helldivers has come out and said, we are not doing PvP, which honestly, I clap for them. You know what? Stick to your guns and stick to your motto that you have. A game made for everyone is a game made for nobody. I absolutely love that. You do not need to make a game that caters to everyone. If it's going to cater to the people who prefer to squad up with people, PvE style against some NPCs, by all means, go for it. You know what? You've had your success. Now add to it, make it a better game, and just continue on. You don't need to become Call of Duty or anything like that. God, please do not do that. I know you're not going to, but regardless, you know, and that's the thing also, that all games are different in the end, right? If Helldivers 2 is not something that you want to play, or it's not fun to you anymore, move on, play something else. Don't be Destiny 2 PvP players. I'm sorry, it's just a fact. Now, a lot of people are also going to try and point to the whole PlayStation account sign-in link thing that just, you know, killed momentum and everything like that. And I hate to break it to you guys, that's not actually true. That's not the way it is. If we look here at 6 months, or if I can zoom in at 3 months, right? Let's take a look here. So this is where account linking shenanigans happened. Well, I hate to break it to you already, but it was already doing this kind of up and down already. I mean, back here at April 13th is at 253,000 players, right? And then it started to go down, and then it kind of looped back up again to 198, and then it looped down again, and then it looped back up, and then the whole account shenanigans stuff happened, and people thought the thing was going to drop off because of all the negative sales or reviews and everything. Well, guess what? There wasn't much change there, and it just kind of continued the same normal, you know, gradual slope down and everything. Now, I'm not saying that it was right to maybe force something onto this, even though technically we did know about the whole link accountage thing. I know people are going to be on completely ends of the spectrum. Some people are going to say, just suck it up and make an account. Others are going to be like, it sucks to have to make the account. Or what about the people who can't make a PSN account, right? So whatever side you want to be on. The way I personally look at it is that if making an account for PSN was doable in every single country right there, and it was as easy as it is for someone who like lives in the States or in Japan, then I'd just be like, suck it up. You make an account for 2 seconds and you're done. You've done it for Xbox, you've done it for Ubisoft, you've done it for everybody, right? But I clearly, obviously know that there are a lot of countries you can't, because, and a lot of that's not just Sony saying we don't want to put it there. It's more like they have to deal with a lot of the regulations and other stuff over in those countries, and they personally look at it and say it's not worth it to do it, unfortunately, right? And so that does mean that some people are going to miss out on some of these particular games and everything like that. I believe that whole listing was like 170 countries, even though when you really think about it, there are some that's just like, I believe even Antarctica was on the list, and I'm like, so one person on Steam in Antarctica, right? So just saying. Like, I know there are a lot of countries where a lot of people would love to play certain games and everything, but 170 is a little off, especially when you're just like, okay, there's one country down here that's like, you know, a population of 1,000 people or something like that. And I know that might sound bad to some people. I'm just the way I look at it and everything. But anyway, regardless, so I don't think the PSN had any real negative attachments to it, because look, at that time when the PlayStation, you know, account stuff was going on, 119,000 people, right? It still stayed around 110, 120, 118. Then it starts to drop down into the 88s and everything as the time goes on, into May and everything like that, which can also be contributed to other games releasing and everything. And then obviously when June hits, we've got games like Destiny with its big 10-year DLC coming out and everything like that. But then it does jump back up to 91, even though it was down in like the 40s for something. That was most likely due to when the new planet was released and everything. And then it slowly just starts to go down again. So whenever the next new expansion thing comes out, most likely we'll probably jump back up. We'll see what happens. And then from there, it just continues to go on. But Lemon, what are your thoughts? Do you really think the PSN was the big reason, even though clearly the numbers are not showing that?
I think it's like every time the internet flips their shit over something. So just like the PSN thing, as we see here, you know, with data, empirically speaking, it does not appear to have been a cause for any concern. Right. We're not seeing it. The data showing that. I think Elden Ring, with how that whole thing of the game's too hard and people bitching, moaning about that on different places, you know, Steam reviews, on Metacritic, that kind of thing. I don't think it really affected anything either, though. The Elden Ring one might be a little bit different since there are genuine issues that were kind of muddled in the PC version of it, because I guess it is super jank.
Right.
Playing it on PS5 now, it's not smooth, even on the console. But I'm curious, though, how long-term with Helldivers, how Sony views it. Does Sony think that's enough people? Is it making enough money for Sony to want to keep it going?
Keep it going and everything, right. Mm-hmm.
I think that's the bigger question. But I think as a whole, I think it's in a good spot. Like I said earlier, I think it's course correcting. I think it's fine. I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the more you look at it and everything, we'll see what happens when the next planet or whatever releases and everything that's actually big, you know, big content drops and everything like that. We've talked about PvE versus PvE and everything like that. And I know obviously Helldivers is a little different from Elden Ring in terms of what type of game it is and everything. But Elden Ring, again, had this huge, amazing success, what it absolutely 100% deserves. 953,000 all-time peak when it released, right? And then it obviously drops off because it's a single-player game. It's PvE, yada, yada. People move on to other stuff, right? And so by the time July 2022 comes around, it's at 52,000 things right there. And I didn't see anyone saying Elden Ring has failed and everything like that. Obviously, I know live service versus single-player, yada. I get that, okay? But it is still a PvE-focused live service game. And it's just, again, like Lemon has said, course correcting itself. And we'll obviously see those numbers jump back up. Elden Ring jumped up a little bit when it came to January, most likely due to when the DLC announcement came out, saying that this would be their one DLC. Everyone jumped back in to try and remember the controls, obviously, except for Lemon here, obviously. He was a little late to the party on that. And then right as the DLC is about to release, boom, it jumps back up to 781,000. And now it's starting to go back down again because either people have beaten the DLC or, unfortunately, when it comes to the PC side of things, optimization is not the greatest. And FromSoft have not been the greatest when it comes to PC releases and everything. Even their PlayStation and other consoles, some of the jank in there can be a little off-putting sometimes. So, and then obviously there might be a little bit of things when it comes to the whole controversy of, is the game too hard and everything, even though it's just like, suck it up, people. This is how all From Software games have been and everything like that. So, right now it's currently sitting at 214,000 on Steam. Right, so clearly it's doing well in terms of Elden Ring and everything. So I don't think Helldivers is going to be in a terrible spot or anything. It will do pretty well in the end and all that kind of stuff. And and like the chat is even saying right now, gamers are just super ADHD and overplay games and then get bored of them super fast. Right, exactly. So in right there, and this is for any game, doesn't matter what game you're playing, just go play something else. That's all you got to do. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of games out there to play and everything. Whether you're someone who has the money to buy new games, or you play something free to play, whether it's on PC, on console or anything, or on mobile, all that stuff. There's tons of stuff to go out and break out. I say this all the time whenever we stream and talk and everything. Break out of your comfort zone and go try some games, even if they're on sale. The Steam summer sale right now is going on. There are tons of amazing deals right now. If you're into shooters, I wouldn't recommend Call of Duty personally, but it's on sale, 35% off. Are you into something like Dragon's Dogma? That's 20% off right now. And those are newer games. You want a really awesome action adventure game? Go check out The Witcher 3. That's $5.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if you don't have a computer, go on to PlayStation and Xbox stores. They generally have sales all the time going on. Go on to Amazon. Try new games out. I know I probably sound like a broken record right now, but regardless, go try some stuff out right here. There's so many games. Get away from your free-to-play stuff, in my personal opinion, but you already know my thoughts on all that and everything. So please don't play gacha games. Just go play some real games. I'm sorry. I'm biased. I know I'm biased, but for those of you who know me, you know why. So, but anyway, regardless though, I think that Helldivers is gonna be completely fine. I think it'll be safe going forward. I know a lot of people are interested to see how Concord does, because that's a $40 game, but we have a video on that you can go check out in the top right corner, or in in our other videos. We did a recording about that last week on stream, so make sure you join us for live streams if you want to have some input on some of these comments and videos and everything like that. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with Concord. I doubt it's going to do 12 million sales, but I think it could still do pretty decently well, considering the fact that it has gunplay very similar to Halo and Destiny, and that's the reason most people play those games. So if it does well, I think we could be pretty good. So, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen.